And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lochran along with you on this Friday morning, getting ready for a Major League Baseball slate across DraftKings FanDuel and all the rest of the sites, fantasy drafts, where you don't have to play a catcher. I don't know if you guys are aware or not. But nonetheless, Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Not bad, man. I'll tell you, watching Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid duel it out again has been special. I mean, last time they faced each other, Giannis had like 50 and 13, Embiid had 40 and 17. Now we got 2 minutes to go. Embiid has 33 points, 13 rebounds, 13 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals and 3 blocks. By the way, that's a pretty big fantasy line. A monster triple-double and 5 stocks. Giannis has 45, 10, 3, and 4 blocks. These two guys going up against each other, I think for years to come, this is going to be one of the most fun rivalries in basketball.
Yep, the East may not be the West, but they have some narratives and some matchups that will be fun to watch as the games go on. If you haven't seen over on Twitter, the dodgeball memes that went back and forth between Bledsoe and Embiid, they're fun. Go check them out. There's some good ones. Don't forget the 5 Ds of dodgeball matter most when playing in the NBA. But we have these 7 games for Major League Baseball on Friday. As we go through the season, you're going to see 14 or 15 typically, maybe 13, 14, or 15. Here we have a smaller slate because it's opening day in the new ballpark. So the first round went through, and now it seems like the Mets and the Orioles are opening, and then they have off on Friday, and then they play again Saturday, Sunday. What we have here is a pitching slate that is, I like it, honestly. As I look through it more and more, I think there are some decisions to be made. Price points on DraftKings, I can't say I'm overly enthralled with. FanDuel, with Nick Pivetta on top against Minnesota, I'm wondering what they're smoking exactly, but I will get to that momentarily. Overall, we looked on DK and see Colin McHugh. Shane Bieber is your second most expensive pitcher, Rick Porcello. And then the gas can's back. Kevin Gausman on this slate at $9K, Dave, to open the season. Now, Gausman had a nice run there with Atlanta. We all talked about pitch mix and spin rate with Gausman to start the year last year. But did you think when you were prepping for baseball this year that you'd see Kevin Gausman $9K out of the gate on DraftKings?
No, but there's a lot of things I didn't anticipate.
That's fair.
You know, I mean, look, it's matchup dependent. We know that DraftKings prices these guys pretty heavily on matchup, and there's the Miami Marlins. So, yeah, it's honestly not the craziest thing. He threw 90 pitches in a minor league start last time out, so I don't expect to see any real limitations here. I honestly, Gausman, to me, it's not crazy, but keep in mind, one thing that you may not pay attention to, but I think you should, is I would really like to see Tyler Flowers behind the plate here and not Brian McCann. Gausman has had a lot of success with Flowers in Baltimore. When Castillo was behind the plate, it was bad news. But when Caleb Joseph was behind there, great pitch framer, good game caller, big difference. Even, when Chris Sale was with Flowers in Chicago, we saw a big difference there. So that is something I'll be paying attention to as the lineups start rolling in.
Yep, and something to keep in mind as you are setting lineups. Yes, baseball, you can set a lineup much earlier, but you want to make sure you pay attention to the lineups coming in during the day. Dave has your deep dive Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Awesemo.com. If you want access to that, access to rankings and projections, you need to sign up. You use the promo code EARLYBIRD as one word over there on Awesemo.com. That gets you 50% off your first month of Awesemo.com subscription, and then you go from there. So we'll go position by position, as we always do here on the DFS Early Bird, previously known as other names, as Dave and I have worked together for many a year, and baseball is back, and I'm happy about that. But we start on DK, and we start with pitching. You have some decisions to make on skill versus matchup, right? And we talk in NBA about the sort of rankings of how you go about things, but You have a pitcher like Gausman against Miami. We can talk about their lack of pop and the strikeout upside there. Rick Porcello against Arizona, who has had some struggles, obviously, to start the year. You trade away a Paul Goldschmidt. You have a Jake Lamb injury. You're going to have some problems there. Bieber against Toronto. Toronto's been one of the worst offenses to start the year. They've been no hit, not entirely. They ended up picking up hits on Thursday night, but Matt Moore was no hitting them for a while. Trevor Bauer, no hitting them for a while. And then you have Colin McHugh at the top at 9,500. It's really making a choice here, Dave, and in my eyes at least, between matchup and skill, right? Of do you want to target the teams that have struggled hitting and you can sort of see that the offense isn't there? Or do you want to maybe take a risk on higher upside arms that you think are in okay matchups rather than great matchups?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it comes that I'm always going to be skill over anything else. Like with a guy like Bauer, I mean, it's pretty obvious why he had so much success in a spot like that. And you're right, though. It doesn't hurt that Toronto has been completely ice cold at the plate. I mean, it's been pretty rough, right? But looking at, we'll just pull up the implied totals here real quick before we go any further. Toronto has the lowest implied total on this slate. And, another thing too is I think you're going to get a decent amount of strikeouts as well. Bieber's pretty solid. You're a seasonal guy. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he was going like early middle rounds.
He along with a couple other names was the guy that caught up to his ADP very quickly. Like he was the guy that early on, along with Pivetta, honestly, he was on the slate as well. You heard a lot of murmurs from the analysts and touts or experts, whatever word you want to use. And then by the time mid-March rolled around, Bieber was going right where I thought his value was. So you weren't getting a bargain in him where you had the upside. You were getting him at the right price point, and even probably beyond that as NFBC wound down over the past over the final week or so. But he has talent. This is a Cleveland staff that we've seen excel, right? Carrasco and Kluber and Bauer, and there's clearly...
Kluber, man, that was brutal yesterday, the other day. Man.
He's had his struggles clearly over the past probably 18 months, to be quite honest, but more so to start the year. But yeah, I think Shane Bieber's fine. I just, from your perspective, from a DFS perspective, is he 9,300 fine?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right. So let's take a look at a couple things. And we're very early into the season. I'm trying to see what these K rates are, though. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know what the Blue Jays strikeout rate is against righties to start the season. Because I think as bad as they've been, I don't think it's that high.
They're mid-tier. I think
it's 20%.
Yeah, it's 20 to 21%, somewhere in there.
It's 21st in the league right now. So, it has not at all. Wait, can that be right? I mean, can it be right that their ISO is
oh yeah.
What?
Their ISO and their WRC plus are terrible.
Their ISO is 8th best.
Against righties?
Yeah.
Hold on.
2019. Yeah. Active roster. Toronto Blue Jays, yeah.
No, there it is. 187. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's really early in the season. The Indians' WRC plus is 34, by the way. Blue Jays kind of like middle of the road in all those categories. I guess thanks Rowdy Tellez, right?
Yeah, it's the small sample size special, I think, right here.
I was saying Tellez has those 2 homers. He's been.
Yep.
The Blue Jays are better than they've looked, but they're also not great. I mean, Randall Grichuk is good. Rowdy Tellez is.
It's the Grichuk 2 homers too. Yeah, you're right. It's between the two of those 4 home runs over the yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Smoke's been pretty terrible. A lot of this lineup's been pretty awful, but they've got a few guys. I still think Bieber's in a fine spot though, and again, when you're asking will you pay for him, to me it all comes down to, all right, what's at the bottom, what's at the top? Like, what if we're not paying for him? Who will we pay for? Who are we going to play? it's not that pretty. I mean, okay, let's take a look. Jake Odorizzi coming off a really solid start against Cleveland, 11 Ks, 6 1-run innings. That Cleveland team doesn't have E5. They don't have Brantley, Kipnis, Francisco Lindor. Some they lost to free agency. Some are injured. The Phillies lineup is super potent. Like, I'm not going to Odorizzi here. I don't think there are enough strikeouts in this lineup anymore either. And if there were, there's too much power. Sonny Gray against Pittsburgh. I think you could see something very similar with Gray this year as we did last year. In Yankee Stadium, he was awful. Outside of it, he was fine. It's not like Great American Ballpark is any better. Like, why? I'm surprised they even signed him. If I'm a team looking to sign Sonny Gray, I'd want to make sure that I'm in a.
They traded for him.
Park, right?
They traded for him. It's not even they signed him. They actually gave up assets for him.
You're right, for sure.
And I have to complete. I'm a big Sonny Gray believer this year. I think that even after the first game, I am on the Sonny Gray train. But that first game was really disappointing. He had no control. He had no control of any of his pitches. And the big storyline from the Yankees was that they were forcing him to pitch a certain way. They were calling his pitches for him, and he didn't like it. Well, it didn't look very good in that first game either. I think. You hit on Odorizzi. I think he's going to get lit up. I think this is a game where Odorizzi gives up 5-6 runs, honestly, and I think this is going to be that sort of situation. Gausman's really a question mark for me here, Dave, and I want your take and want to understand where you're coming from. 9K on DraftKings. He's 71 or 7,200 over on FanDuel, which I feel is much more palatable and understood. He's coming back from a shoulder issue, but this is a guy that pitched fairly well when he was with the Braves after the trade from Baltimore. We've sort of talked about him a lot last year from a DFS perspective. Is Gausman in play here? Is this a guy from a pitching perspective that you feel comfortable rolling out on a one-pitcher site like FanDuel or even a two-pitcher site like DraftKings?
I think the word comfortable is probably a bit far, but yeah, I am willing to. I am. Let's take a look at something, okay? So Gausman, like I said, he fired 90 pitches last time out in that minor league inning, so that's good. 6 innings, that's good. And when you look at this Miami team, so if we're just very small sample, but it goes to something bigger. Curtis Granderson is clearly in the twilight of his career. He's struck out 30% of the time in limited at plate appearances against righties. I'm not even going to say limited again. Know that most of these guys are around 12 to 16 plate appearances. Brian Anderson, 38% strikeouts. Lewis Brinson, 38%. Alfaro, 45%. JT Riddle, 55%. Peter O'Brien, 57%. Neil Walker, 28%. Castro, Rojas, and Prado are not going to strike out a lot.
Yep.
Okay, probably Herrera either, but they don't have any power at all. And then guys like Brinson, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes with a 30% K rate. Alfaro probably going to be around 30% this season again. Granderson might come down a bit, but he'll be around 25. Obviously, O'Brien and Riddle won't be at 55%, but could easily be around 30% or so. There are way more strikeouts here than there were last season, especially against righties, Dan. So I think if you're talking about a ceiling for Gausman, it's here. I mean, it is definitely here. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I get that he's a little, I get that he's a little bit pricey. I think there is a lot of upside in this type of spot simply because Miami is that bad.
They're putrid. Like, that's a word like between you and Maddock over at FI, like putrid and what was the
pool filth was his.
Pool filth.
Putrid was mine. Pool filth was his.
Pool filth.
I'll give him credit. Pool filth is better.
That is fantastic. This is a bad team, and Jeter and management has absolutely decimated the core of this team. And and again, I think I might have said this last time out, but the Marlins might win you a GPP 1 or 2 times this year. Where a Castro and a Granderson and a Brian Anderson all hit home runs, and your stack goes off with because they're cheap and you get high-end pitching. But this seems like a great spot for Gausman. I like him more on FanDuel from a price point perspective. I like him more on DraftKings because it's 2 pitchers, and I can sort of alleviate the risk of Gaussman with a pitcher I trust more. I just don't know that there's a pitcher on the slate that I trust more. Like, I don't know that there's a pitcher that I look at this and say, absolutely, this is a guy I want to go to. You have Quintana against Milwaukee. No thanks. Montez has Houston. Again, not really interested. Pivetta against Minnesota. I can understand some discussion points there. Musgrove the same against Cincinnati. I do like Lance Lynn against the Angels, but he's 7K. FanDuel is cheaper. What do you like the rest of the way at pitcher to maybe pair with a Gaussman or pair with Bieber on a DraftKings?
Yeah. Well, Gaussman again and Bieber, I wish they were cheaper, right?
Yep.
Like, I obviously wish that they weren't that expensive, but I would pay for them over Porcello. I'll tell you that right now. Even though Arizona is not great, Colin McHugh is up there as well. I don't think I get to McHugh against Oakland. The question I have, what are the strikeouts going to look like for this Oakland team? I'm really not sure this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to be that extreme. You look at the non-pitcher and the non-pitcher Ks on this team, other than Laureano, who's, I think, what does he have? 2 big hits already. One, it might have all come against lefties though. Guys like Fegley maybe, but Semien, Canha, Davis. Davis is a huge power bat. And a lot of these guys might not be awesome, but they're not big strikeout guys. I don't think getting the McHugh over Gaussman is worth even the extra 500,
right?
Especially given Gaussman's matchup, in my opinion, at least, is that much better. All right. So McHugh, by the way, the second lowest implied total is Oakland. Bieber against Toronto, that's 3.1. I don't think I'm seeing one. Do we have one for Gaussman in Miami yet?
I haven't seen one as of yet, but I'll take another look.
I don't think we do. Here we go. Well, actually, 8.5, so team total. Miami's higher than I expected.
I see an 8 total and a minus 158 for Atlanta. Miami, I don't see individual teams.
Miami's 3.6. Still low. I mean, it's still really low. Nick Pivetta against Minnesota. I think Pivetta at that price is very much in play. He's coming. He looked real rough in that last his first start. Okay, there's no question. It was pretty ugly. But a couple things here. Atlanta does not strike out. They might not put up runs in every single game, but they really don't strike out. The Minnesota Twins are different. You are going to get some strikeouts here. They're also not nearly as potent offensively from top to bottom. I look at Pivetta with a great spot to bounce back. We know that he has excellent strikeout stuff.
Right.
His biggest problem, and Velasquez to an even larger extent, they work long innings a lot, and then they'll have that one inning where they just get themselves into a lot of trouble. But I mean, if Pivetta could go 6 here with 10 Ks, which I think he could, I mean, that's, 10 Ks is high end, but 8 Ks, 7 Ks, 1 run, I think you'd be pretty happy with that. He finished last year with a 12% swinging strike rate, which is really solid, right? 27% strikeouts. As far as lefties and righties go, he held righties to let me pull it up. I had 2018 pulled up to a 308 WOBA, which is below average, 339 WOBA to lefties. Homers were a little bit worse against lefties. That's an issue, but he still got a lot of strikeouts, and he had an xFIP at 391 against lefties, 306 against righties. Yep. As you know, that's a solid. Those are solid marks. And his BABIP against lefties was also way higher. It's reasonable to assume that he'll actually show some improvement there.
Yep.
And that is something that we should keep an eye on and monitor throughout the season. Pivetta is just too cheap given the other options. The Twins' active roster K rate against righties, looking at 2018 numbers, Dan, would be right around 10th. It's 12th, but they're separated by like nothing. Right around at 22%. Isolated power is, I think, 193, so it's up there. But I'm not too concerned about this Twins lineup. What do you think of Pivetta?
I think Pavetta's, we talked about Bieber a bit, but Pivetta is really a season-long darling. Like, Pivetta is a guy that was talked about throughout the offseason. You look at ERA minus xFIP or ERA minus FIP, whichever metric you want to go by. It was Bieber and Pivetta. Those are the two guys that are right sort of neck and neck for the highest total there, that their ERA did not accurately portray the kind of pitcher they were in 2018. So you saw a lot of investment in both these guys from a season-long perspective. At the price point for Pivetta at 7,700, I like him a lot against Minnesota. I don't think Minnesota is going to strike out a ton this year. I don't think this is a team that you're going to be able to target on a regular basis. But in this matchup and on this specific slate, I think a Twins team here that is mid of the pack, 137 when it comes to ISO. They're not going to hit for a ton of power, so you're not giving up a ton there. And then from a K perspective, I think they're mid-tier as well against righties, as you were saying. Yeah, they're right smack dab on the year thus far, 15%. I like Pivetta. And I think this is a nice bounce-back spot. I'll be honest, the guy in the mid-tier that stood out to me when I first took a look was Lance Lynn. And I know Lynn's not sexy. I know he's not a name that elicits a lot of joy when it comes to DFS. But this Angels lineup's terrible. Whatever happened Thursday night, it's just beyond Mike Trout. I'm not really fearing anyone here. Do you agree? Do you think Lynn at 7K is a decent play to maybe pair with a Pivetta or even higher end? Or do you want to go even cheaper to a Lopez or a Thornton on this slate?
So there's one thing about Lance Lynn that is super important. Damn, how did I get a splinter?
I don't know. What were you doing today?
I don't know, but I just felt it now. That's crazy. I'm going to try and pull this out while I talk.
You need to get the hot water. You need to let it soak.
Nope, I got it.
Oh, all right.
I got
it. Man's man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply anything by saying you need to let it soak first.
Yeah, listen to you. Listen to you. Make it a 4-hour process over here.
Process over results, my man.
Look, you know this. The big thing about Lance Lynn, two things throughout his entire career, so I can say these confidently. One, left-handed hitters have always fared markedly better against him, in a big way. If you just look, I could give you like career stats for Lynn. Even in his bad years and his good years, he was always a lot better against righties. For his career, Dan, he has a 279 WOBA against righties. That is elite, right?
Yep.
I mean, if not elite, it's very close. And 0.58 home runs per 9. Phenomenal. Also, a 26.5% K rate. If he could do that against both-handed hitters, Lance Lynn would be a 10K pitcher. I'm serious. Now, I'm not saying that he's still putting up those same numbers against righties, but he's still good against righties. Lefties, though, 347 WOBA for his career, 1.09 home runs per 9, and a 17% K rate with a 12% walk rate. So there's a 20% K minus BB rate versus righties, 4.8% K minus BB versus lefties. He's also been way better at home throughout his career. If you look at the WOBA, the ISO, the K rate's pretty similar, but home runs, huge difference. He also pitched in St. Louis for most of his career, and I wouldn't be too concerned about Angel Stadium here. But I am going to be paying close attention. How many lefties do they run out?
Well, it's Cole Calhoun at the top. You have Justin Bour. Yep. And then it's Brian Goodwin and
Tommy La Stella if they use him.
Yep.
But neither of whom are really going to concern you much. It's always for me, the more righties, the better for Lance Lynn. And really that I think is really important with Lance Lynn to understand how much worse he is against lefties. A couple other guys before we move on. Trent Thornton. And if you're looking to ride the wave of the Indians just being completely inept at the plate,
trash.
Yeah, super bad. Then Thornton is probably a guy worth considering. I mean, one thing is he had 8 strikeouts in like 5 innings in his debut.
A Blue Jays rookie record. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what was the record?
Was 8K. Before that, I don't know. Yeah.
Wow. I meant, was it strikeouts? Were you talking about strikeouts?
Yeah. The 8Ks in his debut were Blue Jays rookie record. Yeah.
So he had a 24% K rate in AAA last season. He threw 124 innings. So you would think that's going to be somewhere around 8 Ks per 9 at the major league level. I wouldn't expect him to come out and fan everybody like he did last game. 12% swinging strike rate he had in his start. Pretty solid. But he also had a zone contact rate of 95% in that game as well. So I expect a little regression there, but he's the cheapest pitcher on the board. If nobody owns him whatsoever on a slate where there's no real pitching that's like locked in as, yeah, you got to play them, then I'm okay with it. Felix Pena, I do worry about the lefties in this lineup. He's another guy who much better against same-handed hitting. And then the last guy that we'll throw out there would be, where is he? Joe Musgrove. Joe Musgrove's not a bad pitcher at all. He just has never been a super high upside pitcher. You got PNC Park, though, really friendly pitcher venue. And last season, he was not that bad, especially in good spots, like in decent matchups. I'm not saying this is the greatest matchup, but it's also not a terrible one, especially given the dimensions of PNC Park. So Musgrove at that price, if you're not looking to go to Pavetta or Lynn or anyone around that, is definitely all right by me. And he did have 11.5% swinging strike rate last season. We started seeing that improve in 2017, and hopefully he can make some more improvements this year.
Yeah, I love the name Trent Thornton, so I feel like it's a bad comic book name. So I'm right there. But I think he's spot on if you're going to ride, as you said, the Cleveland's not good train. That their offense is terrible. He's your cheapest pitcher over on DraftKings, so that's going to at least play partly into how you approach this slate. He's not on FanDuel. Your cheapest
total for Cincy, by the way, which is the fourth lowest on the slate.
Your cheapest pitcher on FanDuel is Felix Pena, and then you have Sonny Gray just above. I will be honest, I'm not on Gray today. I do like Sonny Gray as a season-long prospect still, but I will not be on Gray here against Pittsburgh. I know Corey Dickerson's out, so this isn't a Pittsburgh offense that's going to have a ton, but I'd like to see. This is a show-me game for me when it comes to Sonny Gray. If he's walking 3 to 4 batters again, then maybe he's just broken, and maybe this is a season that's going to be lost, but I'll take a look there. I like Thornton. I mentioned Lynn. I think Pavetta, and then you get into the top end. I'm going to play more Gausman than I probably like, and that's going to be very frustrating, but we'll deal with that as it comes.
Gray's four-seam velocity in his first start was also down around 2 miles per hour since his last one, or at least his last 8 starts of last season was above 94, sitting above 94 on the four-seamer. At 92. Low 92 last game. Does it matter? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's just, the first game, but it's something to keep an eye on. By the way, did you see Chris Sale average fastball velocity in his last start? Did you see what it was?
What was it? 89.8 or something like that.
89. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, so one of the things that people get into from a season-long perspective is, well, should I freak out, right? Like I invested a first or second round pick in Chris Sale. You can't now because you invested that pick and you're going to get pennies back.
Trade him now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You're going to get pennies back on the dollar that you spent. So you need to be in and Sale's somebody that in the past has done this. We saw it with the White Sox 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago when he pitched to contact. We saw it last year in September with the Red Sox, I should say. But you need to pay attention to velocity and DFS that much more importantly. Like if you're going to have a pitcher who's pitching to contact yields hits and contact yields home runs. And Sale's scary right now from a DFS perspective. If he's still priced up and he's facing teams with a bunch of right-handed batters, I'm not thrilled there. And I think Gray's point too, 2 miles per hour is significant. Like that's a significant drop there in velocity on any pitcher. Let's run through.
Sorry. Go ahead. Last thing here. One guy that could be interesting just as kind of an off the reservation type guy, Brandon Woodruff, doesn't have the worst strikeout stuff. And if that would be exactly the only reason that you're really looking for him, or you're looking at him, right? Quality four-seamer and solid slider as well. Can he have both of them working? Can he have them on a rope? If so, then you're probably going to get decent results from him. Last season, Woodruff, I think he only pitched 32 innings. Let me make sure. 42 innings with the Brewers, and only 4 of them were starts. But he had a 38% whiff per swing rate on his slider, 24 on the fastball, which is pretty good actually, given that fastball, you're not the four seamer. You're not usually seeing a ton of swinging strikes all that often, and then 28% whiff per swing on the changeup, which he didn't use frequently, but 11% of the time. I don't think it's crazy to think that even though it's not a great matchup, Woodruff could put up decent numbers here, and the game is going to take place in is this game taking place? Oh, it's in Milwaukee. You know what? I did think it was in Wrigley. That would have made a difference. Being that it's in Milwaukee is a little bit concerning, but on a slate like this with a very little amount of certainty, if he's super low owned, he doesn't give up a lot of home runs and could give you 7 or 8 Ks here.
Well, and you also have a Cubs team, and this is a narrative and probably non-numerical or non-mathematical, but the Cubs team that just finished their game against Atlanta as we're recording this around 10:45. So add, a half hour to get out to the plane. They're not going to get in till 1, 2, maybe even 3 o'clock in the morning there to Milwaukee. So it is an interesting what lineup they run out exactly against Woodruff and how good they are. I will point out also, just seeing Jose Ramirez left Thursday night's game for the Cleveland Indians with a contusion on his foot. If Jose Ramirez isn't in this Cleveland Indians lineup,
oh yeah,
it's really ugly. It's really ugly.
If he's not in the lineup, it is without a doubt going to be you're going to see their run total come down even further.
Yep.
And then you have Trent Thornton as the cheapest pitcher, already a 3.9 implied run total. He would be you would have to go to Trent Thornton here.
Yeah.
At least in some.
Well, the cash game, the cash games, you'd have to be there, right?
Like in tournaments with some regularity, because you take Jose Ramirez out again. No Lindor right now. No Brantley. Brantley might not be amazing anymore, but him and Kipnis didn't really strike out a ton. No Edwin Encarnacion. Man, they lost a lot, and they're down a lot right now. So yeah.
Yep. So let's talk position by position. We'll go quickly here. As always, don't forget you get the deep bird dive at 5 p.m. over on YouTube. That's followed up by Live Before Lock. We are doing both NBA and MLB at awesemo.com right now, as well as over on YouTube and Periscope. So make sure to check out the schedule. You get the strategy shows in the morning, and then you get, of course, the write-up, which Dave does Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is the deep dive. You need to be a member to do that. Early Bird is your promo code. One word, EARLYBIRD. One word, no space. That'll get you 50% off your first month of awesemo.com. JT Realmuto is your most expensive catcher. Wilson Contreras has had a very solid start to the year for the Cubs behind the dish. He has that matchup with Woodruff here. Grandal against Quintana for the Milwaukee Brewers. You have Jansen, Bieber, Plawecki against Thornton. Catcher's going to be tough here. Any names that at least one or two that you want to put a bug in the ear here as potential upside plays?
Yeah, I mean, look, as we know, it's always going to be a bad position. It's very, very rare that we feel good about catcher, and I don't feel great about it today either. Astudillo is kind of interesting. Just knowing that Pivetta does have some homer problems against lefties. This game's at Citizens Bank Park, which is a really friendly pitcher's park. Let me check, though, because this is important. I think the weather, I think it's going to be cold in Philly tomorrow or Friday. 48 degrees at game time here and a decent chance of rain. If it looks like we're not going to get rain, that does benefit Pivetta even more with those temperatures. But Astudillo is a perfectly fine play. He's looked pretty solid, too. Assuming he's in the lineup, it'd be nice. And he is by the way, I think I said lefties, but I meant just having homer problems at Citizens Bank Park. But it's ugly, man. I mean, Frankie Montas is a decent enough pitcher. So do you want to pay a premium for Chirinos? Realmuto is an interesting one, too, because he's yet to really bust out in Phillies uniform, but we know that he can. Like, we absolutely know that he can. He's got one home run to start the season. I mean, he does already have, 5 RBIs in 5 games, so he by no means has been bad. But the big game from Realmuto should be around the corner. And Jake Odorizzi, while we definitely saw improvements last year, and he's coming off a great game, but against the Cleveland Indians, I could see him getting beat up a bit here. Again, the pitching weather is not, or is way more favorable than the hitting weather. But really, what type of choices do you have here? And Odorizzi's been a reverse splits guy for pretty much the bulk of his career. Outside of those guys, I don't think I want to go to Cervelli here. I get that he's batting third. He is cheap, and it is Sonny Gray. I don't like the park, but really, all things considered, you could do a whole lot worse than that. Anybody you see at catcher that I haven't mentioned yet, and I didn't forget Brian McCann against Pablo Lopez at Suntrust. I just don't really want to talk about the guy.
Sure. Yeah. There's no one that stands out to me. You have someone like a Blake Swihart against Godley, lefty switch hitter who could be in the lineup for the Red Sox. Godley, we didn't talk about much at pitcher, has had his struggles at times on his career. I'd be fine going there, but not somebody I'm overly targeting. I think you mentioned everybody else that I was on. So again, catcher, look at position in the lineup, see who's in, who may not have been previously, cheaper price points, and try to, if you can, keep them part of your stack to make it a little bit easier to swallow getting a bad hitter into your lineups over on DraftKings. Don't forget, on FanDuel, it's catcher / first base, so you don't even have to worry about that. And on Fantasy Draft, you don't have to worry about it at all. Let's talk next about the first base position, where talent is obviously at the ready. Freeman against Lopez, Rizzo against Woodruff, Rhys Hoskins against Odorizzi, Aguilar against Quintana, Votto against Musgrove. So some of the pitchers we've talked about are, on the other side of these matchups, but these are elite hitters. Any of the top-end first basemen strike your fancy?
I do like Freddie Freeman against Lopez for sure. Rhys Hoskins against Odorizzi is fine. What's their run total? 4.5, 4.7 for Atlanta. Rizzo against Woodruff, just because you're at Miller Park, and it's really one of the best homer parks in the game. I don't know what to expect of Godley this season. 2 years ago, he was great. Last season, really did not look like himself, even though the curveball was still strong. Mitch Moreland is cheap, though, facing Godley in Chase Field. With or without the humidor, it's still not a bad park to hit in. Rowdy Tellez, how about him against Bieber? He's going to bat middle order, and if Bieber's super chalky, I actually would not have an issue with that. But you'd want it to be a leverage type play other than just getting him in there because he's a lefty versus Bieber. It's a leverage play because I think both of us expect Bieber to be relatively high owned with Toronto struggling and with them having the lowest implied total on this slate. Justin Bour against Lynn. I mentioned lefties have hit Lynn well. Even if he's having a decent game, he's not immune to keeping all of the balls inside of the yard. Those are a few first basemen that I like a decent amount. You got guys like Jake Bowers against Thornton, should be batting third. A few other guys similar to that, but nobody I'm in love with at first base, oddly enough.
I think there are a lot of options here, but no one that stands out nearly as much as I'd prefer. I'm with you on Freeman at the top end, but I think this will shake out to exactly how the rest of my lineup construction comes to pass. At other positions, obvious upside at first base is pretty immense. Second base, you have Altuve, Albies, Moustakas against Quintana. I'm very intrigued by what lineup the Brewers run out there, to be quite honest. Whether or not they mix some things up, get Hernan Perez into the lineup for a Shaw or a Moustakas here. So keep an eye on that one. Brad Miller could be part of this Cleveland Indians lineup, especially now with Jose Ramirez potentially on the shelf. He has a matchup with Thornton, Scope, Cesar Hernandez, second baseman, not too shallow. What do you got at second?
So Adam Frazier, 3,800 against Sonny Gray. I definitely like that. Forget about the park. It's still a good spot. Albies I like a lot more against lefties. I really do. And his price came up a good amount after the last two games where he made for a much better play, in my opinion. Rougned Odor against Pena is another one that I think you have to consider. Pena is not bad, but I don't really think he's proven himself yet. So if you've got a few of these lefties going up against Felix Pena, even if it's not Globe Life, I still think the price points on them are decent enough to get them in the lineups. Of course, you have guys that might have some popularity in cash, like Zobrist if he leads off against Woodruff. Not a lot of power, but it is a good park, and he is pretty affordable. the weird thing about this slate is we talked about a lot of pitchers that we could see being viable, which means you can see a lot of hitters being viable, but not many that really jump off the page at you. I think we're going to see that at a lot of these positions for exactly that reason.
Yep, I think I'm right there with you. I think pitching is balanced enough across all the price points that you're going to have to make some decisions at each position along the way. Stacks are not really jumping out at me, to be quite honest. So each position is going to be a little bit of a landmine. I think that Frazier's a great call. If you're not in on Gray at all this season, at 3,800 is a definite savings. And as I said, Hernan Perez is second base shortstop eligible on DraftKings. So depending on where he is in the lineup at 3,800. I like Quintana a lot, always have, but I could see Perez having a decent day here. Third base, we wait on Jose Ramirez, assume he's going to be out of this lineup at least on Friday, 5,200. You got Bregman is against Montes. Josh Donaldson gets Lopez. Devers against Godley, I like a lot at 4,400. And then you have Suarez against Musgrove. You get into the mid-ground of Franco and Shaw. Marwin Gonzalez against Pivetta at 4K. Asdrubal Cabrera against Pena at 4K as well. I like Cabrera if Mazara is still in the lineup. He'll be batting fifth. So Cabrera at 4K stands out a bit here at third base. What do you like at the hot corner, Dave?
I feel like this will be the night where the Houston Astros just go off, right? Against a pretty decent pitcher in Montes. But I know he had, I think, what is it, 6 strikeouts and 6 innings in his first start. He was pretty solid. Let's see here. He had 6 Ks and 6 one-run innings. He did give up 1 home run, but he last season in 13 appearances, 11 starts, 65 innings, averaged 5.9 Ks per 9. Had a 15% strikeout rate. Even in AAA, he had a 20% K rate with 7 Ks per 9. Not going to miss a lot of bats here. So Bregman and Altuve and Springer and Houston in general, to me, makes for a really interesting play. I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually contrarian, even though Houston's got a 4.7 total. They left the bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Frankie Montes is in a gas can, all of that. But I kind of think this could be that spot where we really start to see them blow up, and it might be that a day that everyone kind of backs off of them. But outside of them at third base, Rafael Devers against Godley is okay here. God, I want to say Franco, but paying 4K plus when batting eighth is tough. Even though he's looked outstanding to start the season, it's pretty difficult to get there. You mentioned Asdrubal Cabrera. He should bat middle order. I don't know what the situation is with Mazara. We know he missed yesterday, but we'll keep an eye on Cabrera. The thing, though, is the power. A lot of this Angels lineup a lot of this Texas lineup might be decent at generating contact, but not a lot of power. Gallo certainly does, and maybe a couple of other guys, but it's not going to be a team that's just loaded with home runs, and Asdrubal's not going to help them put up power numbers either. I don't want to go to anyone for Miami against Gausman, so even though Neil Walker's pretty cheap, I don't – you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. If Gausman's popular, Walker could absolutely be one of those guys.
Yep.
And, Miami could be one of those teams. Call me crazy, but –
You're crazy, but go on.
But even if Gausman's a good play, Gausman is the type of player that when he's chalk, you really want to not only fade, but get a decent amount of exposure to the team he's facing. Because when he gets lit up, he gets lit up really bad. There's a handful of pitchers in this league that when they're chalk, you just get away from it and go with the opposite team.
Yeah, and I think that is a great point. And to shill a little bit, Awesemo.com has ownership projections. You want to check in on those. If you're playing in GPPs and the large field GPPs, you want to get away from these high ownership guys. And if Gausman's a 25 to 30% owned guy, and he shouldn't be at 9K, but if he is, or even 20 to 30%, you want to have the other side of it. You want to have the higher upside of that matchup for the Miami Marlins. And I said it when we were talking earlier, I think they'll win a GPP 1 or 2 times this year. Maybe Friday's that day where Granderson and others on this roster have big upside against Kevin Gausman, the Neil Walkers of the world, and Starlin Castro's, Brian Anderson, JT Riddle will probably be in this lineup as we talk shortstops next. Riddle will probably make an appearance for the Marlins, batting from the left side. You do have Correa, Bogarts, and Gene Segura against Odorizzi. Andrews, Dansby, Swanson, Cole Tucker is Pittsburgh's shortstop backup. Sorry, he's not anymore. He was optioned to AAA, so not the case there. But I do think that you have some upside from Riddle at, I think he's 3,500 on DK. Yeah, JT Riddle's 3,500. What do you like at shortstop?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. It doesn't mean you don't have a few guys that are in play. I like Bogarts against Godley at Chase Field. Baez is all right, but you're going to have to pay a premium for him against Woodruff, who, like I said, I think is pretty solid. I could be wrong, but looking over Woodruff's numbers, I remember last year, I'm pretty sure that he was not a big home run guy, not just last year, but didn't he pitch? 2017 as well. So for his career, he's allowing 0.65 home runs per nine to lefties, Dan, 1.1 to righties. Not a huge sample, but almost 200 plate appearances or batters faced, both lefties and righties for Woodruff. He does do a pretty solid job of limiting the power, even at home. No, actually, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Home for his career, he's allowing 1.37 home runs per nine. Home against lefties, 0.93. Home against righties, 1.69. So, yes, he has had some issues in the power department against righties at home, but not the biggest sample. Miller Park is a good park for home runs, though, so you have that. Gene Segura batting second against Odorizzi. He's another one that hasn't really broken out for a big game, but I think it's coming soon. Jorge Polanco. I don't mind Polanco, even though he's facing Pivetta. You should get him at the top of the order. And really, at the position, is there anyone that you really love? I sound redundant, but I don't. And I even think if you're looking to say Gossman's chalk, JT Riddle down there, very cheap, middle of the order, and a good park shift away from Marlins Park. Let us not forget, Dan, SunTrust Park, since its inception, has been one of the best lefty parks in the game.
Yep, I think that makes a ton of sense. Especially the park shift. And we talk about pace up in NBA. Park shift does matter a bit here in Major League Baseball. Give some upside to some of these bats who play in parks like Miami or elsewhere as the season goes on. In the outfield, you have Trout and Harper, 56 and 5,500 respectively. Mookie Betts off to a very slow start on the year for the Boston Red Sox. He's at 54. Yelich against Quintana, lefty-lefty matchup. Maybe Yelich gets the night off here. I don't know. I have the speculation there, but maybe they give him a breather. You get Chris Davis against McHugh. Gallo against Pena has some upside clearly for the power bat, though it is in Anaheim, so you limit the power upside there. Springer against Montes. Puig has Musgrove. Say it often. We could roll through almost every single name here. I do like the Twins power bat outfielders, Kepler and Rosario against Pivetta if he's not on to have some power here. What do you like as some of your outfielders, Dave?
Yeah, I could see that. Also, I'm still on board with the Red Sox outfield.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, they're hard not to like. I'm sorry, not Aaron Judge. So he's not on this slate. Aaron Judge is on he on the day slate? I think he is. Doesn't matter. I was looking at something and he's still in the sheet. But you can't really go over everyone here. Boston outfielders, you talked about Minnesota. I don't think those are bad options. Nick Pivetta at Citizens Bank Park. If he comes out to a shaky start, it could get ugly quick. Bryce Harper against Odorizzi. Forget about the reverse splits. Who cares? Same goes for Mike Trout. You know, Lynn being much better against righties. You don't care. It's Mike Trout. If you can pay for him, go ahead and do it. All of those guys are going to be perfectly viable. Same with Ronald Acuna. I mean, he's fine. And Andrew McCutchen leading off against Odorizzi. He's looked good. He's been disciplined at the plate, and the results are showing. He's always going to get thrown a ton of good hittable pitches, which is great. Especially, I mean, just look who's behind him in the order. So many ridiculously powerful bats. Benintendi against Godley. I don't know what we're going to get from Godley, Dan. I think he's a guy that we really should pay close attention to because Is Godley going to be 2017 or 2018 version, or is he going to fall somewhere in the middle?
Right. Yeah, I don't think we have an answer quite yet on where Godley rounds out, but I think he's at least worth targeting and understanding a little bit better here. I'll throw I know Pedro Lopez was a big spring training darling, but I'll throw Markakis into the mix here. Had a decent night on Thursday, and 3,800 could be a little bit of a savings here depending on where he appears in this lineup for Atlanta as they roll it out. But the lefty bat of Markakis, I think, is at least viable at that cheaper price point. Any
Rangers lefties as well against Pena, particularly Joey Gallo, who has as much power as anybody in the game. Shin-Soo Choo is another one of those guys. I don't know what the stolen base matchup looks like for Lopez, because Inciarte could be interesting. I have to go back and look. I don't think he's someone that gives up a lot of swipes. I'll figure it out and put it in the deep dive. And then value, I think you really just have to wait and see where some of these cheap bats are slotted into at the position, because you don't normally want to pay down here. But if you can and you see them leading off or in a good spot, very affordable, I'm perfectly fine to do that. I just don't know if we have anybody right now that fits that bill. Cole Calhoun could be one, though. Batting leadoff against Lynn. We know his problems with lefties. That to me makes sense. And there should be a few more along the way. Max Kepler against Pivetta leading off. I like the guys at the top of the order that you're going to be able to get at sub 4K on DraftKings.
That's going to do it for the podcast here. Don't forget, you find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, L-O-U. Wow, that's been so long. LOUGHY_D. You find him over there on Twitter. Find him on SiriusXM Fantasy Saturday and Sundays. That means tomorrow as you listen to this. And Sunday, find me on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network, 8 to 11 Saturday morning, if you so choose. I'm on Twitter at Dan Strafford. Of course, it's Osmo_com for the website. You can find all of the personalities as well, Emac and Adam and Josh and Jake and all the guys over there at Osmo on Twitter as well. Or find us in Slack chat. To do that, you need to be a member, Osmo.com. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD, 50% off your first month of your subscription at our website. So thanks so much for listening. As always, we'll be back with you Monday morning. Tomorrow morning, you get Emac and Adam right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.